All right, welcome back. The 2025 budget was announced just a few hours ago. A lot to take away for the middle class, and of course, the tax break is going to be instrumental in what the government feels is the main driver for increasing, expanding consumption and taking the economy to the 5 trillion mark. I'm going to, in fact, hand it over to our editor-in-chief, Rishabh Gulati.
All right, joining us on the telecast is a person you remember recently as the G20 Sherpa. Before that, he ran the Niti Aayog, and before that, a lifetime of service in the public of this country. Amitabh Khan, thank you very much for joining us and taking a few questions. I have to start you with the big ticket item, and it's very happy news for pretty much all of us who earn a salary and or earn a pension. There is going to be not a slight, but a substantive change in the tax bracket. What has engendered this? So 1 lakh crores is going to be put into people who earn salaries and direct taxes.
So Rishabh, the objective is to really take India's growth to a high trajectory of 8 to 9%, because you need to drive demand. Demand comes from consumption. Consumption leads to demand. Demand leads to production. Production leads to growth, and growth leads to jobs. So the whole cycle is one of creating growth and jobs. And given the present economic circumstances and the global scenario, it was necessary that we grow on the basis of domestic demand, because globalization is impacted. You are seeing tariff wars, you are seeing the breakdown of global supply chains, and it was necessary to give a major push to domestic demand in India. This, to my mind, when you couple it with the focus on labor-intensive sectors like tourism, toys, footwear, leather, all of them, they will have a huge impetus in terms of both growth and jobs. And that, to my mind, was critical in India's context. One of the other good things that's happened is that Finance Minister has done this while this is a very major bonanza for the middle class. You look at it, it's probably the biggest bonanza any government has given in terms of tax relief ever in the history of India. It almost amounts to about 7% of the total tax collection. Now, if this has also been done in a very, fiscally prudent manner, the fiscal deficit for this year is 4.8%, and she's targeting for a 4.4% fiscal deficit next year. So she's been very, very responsible financially in taking India's growth and progress. She's obviously been concerned that this should not lead to inflation, and therefore a very, very good and deft handling of the budget.
Okay. Fiscal deficit, ladies and gentlemen, target is 5%. So we consider anything less than 5%, and the argument is that err on the higher side when growth is a bit slow. So let me ask you then the larger picture question, Amitabh Khan, because if any person steps out onto the highways which are being built at great pace, the airports, the ports, the new trains, we see the markets are buzzing and the people are buying things. But yet the GDP figure seems to be very stubborn. It doesn't want to go above 6-7%. What's happening?
So two things. One is that there has to be a greater flow of credit, to my mind. Finance Minister has done a job, and in the long run you need more credit to flow in, which is the job of Reserve Bank of India through the monetary policy. The second is that over the years we've built up a lot of regulatory cholesterol. Every department of the government and regulatory bodies have added a lot of circulars and guideline procedures. And actually both the economic survey and the budget talk about it. We need to take it head on and just eliminate all these very vigorously. The government has talked about a committee which will give a report in 1 year time. I don't think we can wait for 1 year. We should do it much quicker and much faster. And that to my mind is very, very important. And the third point is about creating good quality infrastructure. The budget provides for 11.2 lakh crores, but the budget also talks about asset monetization. That is, a 10 lakh crore scheme between 25 and 30, which will take government assets and put it up in a transparent manner for government to operate and run it. Therefore, the more assets we put out for monetization, the better it will be in terms of productive efficiency of the government. And the other is the budget talks about every ministry structuring projects on a private-public partnership for 3 years and putting it out for taking it forward for implementation. So these are very, very good measures to drive India's economy.
Okay, let me just pick on that point for a second, because you say asset monetization, plowing back the money. So for people watching the broadcast, if you have a metro station which is owned by a metro company, and the metro station then has a restaurant which can be monetized at the railway station that goes back to the metro. We have the railways, so many assets in this country, sir. We've been talking about this for a long time. Is it happening at any scale?
Yeah, so last year, the 21 to 24 asset monetization pipeline of 6 lakh crore has been very successful. It has crossed the target. And that's why the government could put out many warehouses, it could put out airports, it could put out coal mines, it could do many things. So based on the success of that, this has been accelerated further to 10 lakh crores.
Okay, so now we are seeing, number one, we've discussed, okay, tax slabs. The second was rationalization. Now, in terms of customs duty, 2 years ago, you would have 22 slabs of customs duty. They've come down to just 8 now. So 7 have gone last year, 7 further have gone this year. For MSMEs, for people wanting to take small roles, Kisan credit cards, within the Swanidhi scheme, which is your Rediwalas to have access to loans, we are trying to put in money into the economy. Now, Amitabh Khan ji, the obvious question is, what's the lag time? Because the budget gets announced now, April 1st. Are we seeing some of these measures kick in towards the latter part of the year, that the GDP scenario, which the economic survey says we need to hit 8%, does it look brighter for next year?
Yeah, so the important thing, Rishabh, on that is that the budget has been announced. We should get cracking on its implementation. In India, implementation is the key. And all these measures which have been announced are really far-reaching implications, from agriculture to MSME to startup to clean tech. They have far-reaching implications. If we take time to implement, it'll cost us dearly. We are at a point of time when there is, you have breakdown of global supply chains. You have a conflict in Europe, you have new productive forces of AI and quantum computing emerging. There's no time. We need to do all this, what the Prime Minister has talked about, what the FM has talked about. All of us must do that with a sense of urgency and a sense of missionary zeal.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, because you're obviously, for people watching the broadcast, one of the key architects of Incredible India is Amitabh Khan. So in terms of tourism, sir, when it's just the practicalities of e-visa, but developing the tourism sites, we already know some of them are identified, like Kashi and others. Are we tapping it? Is it visible, or is it still going to take time?
No, a lot of it is visible. Kevadia, Varanasi, many sites are very visible. A lot of work has happened. Now tourism is a private sector activity, so we need to get the private sector to come in. If you don't have good resorts, tourism will not work. If you don't have private sector play is critical for tourism, because every job that you create 11 indirect jobs. And therefore, providing infrastructure status to those who invest in these 50 cities is, to my mind, a very, very good initiative. It will have far-reaching implication in terms of investment. And you'll have many hotels coming up in these cities in the years to come.
Okay, I have to ask you, because the key, sort of block that we are in, right, is R&D, innovation, and it's everybody knows it. It is primarily the job of, the private sector to get it done. I mean, in the end, OpenAI and all these companies are private sector entities, not owned by the US government. So I want to ask you specifically, this deep fund of funds for tech and this 20,000 crore for research and allocation, where does this money actually translate to?
So, like we did the startup fund of funds. So, if the fund of fund puts in 1/3 of the money, the other money comes from the venture capital fund. So, you have when finance minister talks about 91,000 crore coming in the startup movement, it means that on a base of 10,000 crores, 91,000 crore has come in. And that's why the startup fund has been replenished. And she's also announced a deep tech fund of fund, because deep tech you need more patient capital. And that to my mind is very good. This will, innovation and startup movement will get fueled through this, through the deep tech and the startup fund of funds. But the private sector investment in R&D is very low. That needs to go up, and go up very, very substantially. Secondly, the patents that we must file for patents, get patents, and the patents we get must get commercialized in India.
For companies, sometimes companies go bankrupt and the biggest asset value is the patent. Okay, I've got a couple of questions because I know our time is short, sir. But everybody in the world right now is talking AI, and they're talking DeepSeek from China and $500 billion that the Trump regime is putting together in Operation Stargate. What is our plan for AI?
So let me first say that the AI race has just begun. It is wide open. And secondly, my view on this is that India must go for foundational layers rather than application layer. This is really the future. We should really put a lot of resources and provide computing power to our startups and to our universities and colleges. Put a lot of more risk capital like the deep tech fund into areas like this. And thirdly, there's rarely has in cutting edge technology, the initial innovator has won. You look at electric vehicles, General Motors was the first one to do it, they went bust. Similarly, in the case of internet, it was Google came much later. So the second mover has an advantage, and to my mind, India has a huge advantage of technologically leapfrogging.
My last question, sir, because when we are talking about transitional shift in the Indian economy, so we are probably a year or two away, and you worked on a lot of these projects when you were in the Niti Aayog, but we are about to see a culmination, what government calls saturation. So saturation in open defecation free, which means toilets, saturation in Awas Yojana, saturation in Jal Yojana, potentially saturation, electricity, internet. That means every single individual living in this country has a pakka ghar, has a toilet, has water, has electricity. Just the impact of this social mobility, does it unlock the Indian market? Because everyone says the Indian market is the top 5%. Everybody does not have discretionary spending power. Does it unlock the Indian market?
Yeah, it does, because you are creating infrastructure by building 40 million houses. You are building infrastructure if you create 120 million toilets and bring behavioral change. If you are providing piped water connection to 253 million citizens, you are building piped connections, and therefore you are making a huge transformation in terms of infrastructure. But more than that, you are actually providing the basic infrastructure to the citizens, because by doing all this and ensuring that close to about 110 million women of India get gas connection and do not burn firewood is transformational. And therefore, this infrastructure creation will be a very major driver of lifting people above poverty line. It will be a very major driver of transforming India. And it will be a very major driver of India doing sustained growth over a long period of time.
Okay, I have so much to ask, but I know it's a busy day for you, and we'll come back and have a larger conversation in the coming few weeks. Amitabh Khan, as always, for the service that you've done, and thank you for sparing the time on this. Amitabh Khan, former CEO of Niti Aayog, former G20 Sherpa, and of course, a person who spent a lifetime in governance, joining us here on Newsx.
All right, Rishabh, appreciate that conversation. A lot of insights into what this budget spells out at not only a granular level, but at a holistic level as well. Let's get this conversation going. We'll continue to talk to people who understand this budget from a number of perspectives. Dr. Ajay Dua, former Commerce Secretary, is here with us. Akash Jindal, Senior Economist, also joins us on the program. Savio Rodriguez, Editor-in-Chief of the Goa Chronicle, joins us on the program. Mr. Vinesh Menon, Director General of Arise, is also here with us. Mr. Dhruv Tulli, SEBI registered RA, with us on the program. Mr. Vinod Rawal, tax expert, also joins us on the show. Hussein Dohadwala, co-CEO of Crimson School, with us on the program as well. Major General Sudhakarji, advisor in defense banking, SDFC in Central India, also joins us on the program. All right, I'll begin with Mr. Menon. Vinesh, I hope you can hear me. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Vineet.
All right, well, this is obviously a very education-centric budget. I don't remember the last time, Vinesh, the finance minister spent this kind of a time on explaining how education and AI, how investing in innovation and teacher training, and how affordable education for disadvantaged students is of a priority and paramount to the central government. What has been your assessment and analysis of this acknowledgement, if I can call it for the lack of a better word, by the government? Vinesh, nobody understands this as much as you do.
No, Vineet, I think I tend to agree. I certainly see many more bites around the education sector in this budget. Let's face it, 260 million plus children today of India are going to schools. And nearly 140 million of them are going to government schools. Now, one of the big concerns that everybody had was this growing divide between the students going to the government schools and the ones going to the, let's say, the unaided independent finance schools. And by bringing in some of these changes to try and reduce this digital divide, I think a few good steps have been taken. The 50,000 Atal Tinkering Labs to enhance the whole curiosity in students in these government schools, great step. Enhancing the broadband in secondary schools, great step. Introducing digital textbooks, great step. So these are all good ways to try and get the students to actually come up speed, come up the learning curve, and to help increase their learning experience. The whole AI piece of, the AI Center of Excellence that she has announced about putting about 500 crores and AI Center of Excellence purely for education. I think that reflects the government's intent to keep pace with the flavor of the globe. And and trying to get the whole AI integrated into the education sector as a tool. Many other small little changes, increasing infrastructure and IITs, the whole limit increase for TCS under this whole LRS scheme for education loans that is going to get remitted, additional skilling centers. These are all very, very good steps in the space. Even the 20,000 crores that I think Rishabh was talking to Mr. Kant about, the whole deep tech fund of funds for getting innovation out. I'm sure a big portion of that will come into education. Again, extremely good step. So I think overall I tend to agree. If you ask me, do I have any subtle concerns? I won't say concerns, but I wish, given the size of the education sector and the need to make faster changes, I wish a little more big bang reforms could have been introduced. I think areas in the regulatory framework, for example, there's a lot to be done in that area in this whole sector. A little bit of intervention in the whole indirect and direct taxation for specific to the sector. Some good interventions. I remember the finance minister talking about a performance-linked incentive scheme to boost tourism in states. Could we have replicated something like that for the education sector? Perhaps. So these are small little things, and I think Mr. Kant, I remember him mentioning about implementation. Now, NEP 2020 is a great move in India's education progress. Implementing of that into the ground needs a lot of interventions, perhaps a little touch on that. So some of these areas are the only ones which I would refer to as slight areas which could have been bettered. Finally, I think, given that this whole relief for the middle class on salary, while it might boost consumption, I'm hoping it will also boost a little more allocation of money to invest into education for the children. So overall, progressive budget, good thrust for the economy, perhaps a little bit of reform change.
Finish, there has been impetus on skill development as well. Would you just shed 30 seconds on that as well? How is that going to help the education center?
Yeah, I think workforce, jobs, livelihood, skills, and getting them prepared for the workforce is something that everybody's been talking about. This whole national skill centers that has been set up as part of this budget plan, I think is a great move. Again, while this is being done, a little bit of changes and tweaks in the ITIs of this country may also be important, and I'm sure that's not going to get missed out with all this tech movement. So yeah, so I think the whole connect between the schooling system to the skilling system, and I think some work in the higher education where IITs and some other places are getting beefed up are all good moves, Vineet.
All right, fair enough. Valid points there, Mr. Menon. Uh, Dr. Dua, your initial assessment of this budget, obviously, more paisa in the pockets of the common man is what the government wants. They want more spending. They want, of course, a consumer-driven economy that is going to bring in not only funds, but create a demand which is instrumental for that 5 trillion target. Mr. Dua.
Thank you, Vinit. I think whatever the finance minister could do within the constraints she is required to operate. And I refer to really two constraints. One, a large segment of the economy needs government support. We haven't reached a stage where we could pass on the burden to the private sector, and the private sector shares the government, and the government is able to focus on a handful of things. We haven't really quite reached that stage. Having said that, at the same time, the finance minister had to keep in mind that the economy has somewhat slowed down last year, and there is need for incentivizing the private sector to start playing its role, particularly in gross capital formation, and that required things what are within our own hands, greater capacity utilization. We can't do much about boosting the world trade or the global uncertainties. We have them reduced. So the finance minister, working within these constraints, I think has tried to balance all these priorities. So this middle income thing which we are talking about, yes, it would help, but what would have been an ideal situation? That up to 12 lakhs, you do exempt people from any taxation. So if it is a 12.01, then you pay the tax on 1,000 or 10,000, whatever that figure is. Whereas in the scheme of things which the finance minister has put out, if you cross the income of 12 lakhs, then the exemption of 12 lakhs doesn't remain available to you. The exemption reverts to 4 lakhs. It used to be 3, that's been enhanced by 1 lakh to 4 lakhs. So this is what I would like to say is something which has come in the way of the industrial growth of the country, moving from small industry to medium or the large, invariably, and losing the incentives given by the government or the state or the center. People have had to remain constrained, keep yourself small, rather than acquire economies of scale. You spread out and you set up a second small industry, a third small industry that way. So this was just one point which I wanted to bring to your notice, that perhaps it would have meant a greater kind of burden on the country's finances, which the finance minister obviously probably didn't find enough room for it. But on the whole, it would have helped the growth process. But one good thing is, which I'm having said that, the budget today, if you look at, she didn't probably talk about it so much in her speech.
Right.
The budget has increased the investment limits as well as the turnover limits, the two criteria on which the division between small, medium, and large industry is currently being made. She has enhanced those limits considerably.
All right. Okay. Let me also rope in Savio Rodriguez, editor-in-chief of the Goa Chronicle. Savio, thank you for being here. Well, the idea is not to, get in any political angle over here, I'm sure. Though if I just invoke some of the comments that have been made by the opposition, they are enough to rile you up to speak for a few hours. But nevertheless, I'm going to request you to focus on what you thought were the highlights today. And do you think that when it comes to a balancing act, this government has always played its card very, very carefully? During 2024, when the expectation was, Savio, that the budget would be populist, it was not. During 2025-26 budget, we were not expecting the government, to go all bonanza when it came to pleasing the middle class, they have. What's going on here, according to you?
Well, Vineet, thank you for having invited me to a wonderful discussion. So basically, what I think the government under Narendra Modi is doing is actually laying out the blueprint for the economic growth that we will see as a nation over the next 10 to 15 years. And that economic growth is actually focused on really four engines. One is agriculture, the next is MSMEs and startups, the third is investment, and the fourth is exports. Now, we are all talking about the fact that yes, one of the largest, stakeholders in the country is the salaried middle class, and what the government has done for them at this point of time is something that is certainly going to cool, the anxiety that the people have had for a long time. Because quite frankly, the salaried class is one of the set of people that contribute considerably to the tax bracket that India has, and they've always felt shortchanged. So I think what the government has done is keeping in mind that the salaried middle class needs to be comfortable. They need to be at ease, and that's what it's done. But the real focus and the way I look at it is where is India going to go over the next 5 to 10 years? When you look at the focus on the startups, you look at the focus on the investments, you look at the focus on nuclear energy. I mean, that is something that is revolutionary in its thought process itself. Because what we are doing is trying to create an India that is going to be globally competitive. And that's what we require. Yes, we need to answer to the demands of the people of this country. We need to look at reforms in the taxation itself. I'm of a belief that we should do away with income tax and bring in a concept such as transactional tax, but those are debatable topics which will be debated over a period of time. But what we require is to be able to work with the people of this country, both at rural and urban area, to get them to buy in and work together with the government towards seeing India rise as a socio-economic power in the years ahead. And I think this budget is actually the blueprint for that vision itself. It is something that we will see evolving not only 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, even more. And that's important because what people require, what we need today, is people are not demanding money. While a lot of people politically, you see political parties going out and dishing out money, people don't want money. People
Right.
want an ability to learn to fish and be able to fish. They don't want to be given a fish all the time. They want to be able to learn to fish. So whether it's startups, whether it's MSME, whether it's the corporate sector, whether it's FDI coming into India, whether it's investments coming into India, people see India as a destination of the future. People see India as a large market. And more importantly, people see India where there is such valued skilled labor available and at an economical rate. And therefore, that valued labor is why foreign companies and other companies are coming into India. Now, look at the focus on tourism. And I'm really glad because tourism is one subject that I follow a lot after MSMEs and
And it affects you
startups.
directly.
And
It affects you directly, Savio, because you're from
correct,
Goa and we have
from
seen the
Goa.
plight of Goa.
Right. And what is important is if you look at governments over a period of time, there has been never that kind of thrust towards tourism as an employment generator. Tourism was considered has always been seen as the bindi on your head on the head of a woman, which beautifies a country, but never seen as an employment generator. And I think one of tourism's biggest prowess is that it's an employment generator, it's an economic generator as well. And the ability for it not only in the core businesses within tourism, but in the ancillary businesses that benefit out of tourism is where tourism economics growth really lie. So to be able to identify 50 such tourism destinations and to work to get private sector to be involved in it, to try and create a focus on tourism. I think to me, coming from a state like Goa, and I believe that the Goa government will take all advantage of this, is to see that the country and the government of our country is finally waking up to the real potential of tourism, which is that of economic and growth and employment generation. Having said all that, the most important thing is what is the underlining message of the budget. The underlining message of the budget is that the government
Okay.
has got its ear to the ground and it wants to listen to every stakeholder that is responsible for the socio-economic growth of India. And therefore, in my opinion, this is a very holistic budget. It is a budget that answers different questions at different levels,
All right.
and you
Okay.
have to pick
Let
and
me also.
choose.
We have a full house today, Savio. Apologies for cutting you short. Dhruv Tulli, SEBI registered RA, also joins us on the show. Dhruv, thank you for joining us. Well, the stock markets, when they wake up on Monday, are they going to rally behind the budget? There was a dip in the stock market. Just a few days back, it is picking up, but it's not reached the level that we got so accustomed to a couple of months ago. And this is being hailed as a correction. But the fact of the matter is that this budget does address what you call the positive symptom that stock markets usually rely on to rally ahead. Would you say so?
Thank you, Vineet, for having me. And that's a very, very well thought out and well put out question over there. So the first thing that in my experience, which I would like to say is that, in my life, I've basically seen about 10 budgets, back to back ever since Jaitley served was there. But, in my experience, it's not a very good idea to predict the market right after the budget, because your markets will take time to kind of settle in. They take around, let's say a week or 10 days to kind of find the direction. The other thing when it comes to a budget like this, which was presented a few hours back, is that this budget will act as a tailwind and not as a headwind, right? And the reason why I'm basically saying is that this budget will act as a tailwind and not as a headwind for the markets is that this budget primarily focused on increasing your disposable income for people. Obviously, there are some good parts about that. There are some bad parts about that as well, that there's an exemption limit of 12 lakhs as well, but apart from that, a person who's making just 12.1 12.2 lakhs, that person would still not fall into that tax exemption limit. He would still have to pay the entire taxable income. So that does not put a lot of disposable income into a hands of a person who's making 12.1 12.2, something around that part as well, right? What we need to focus on when it comes to the markets over here is going to be two data sets, which I basically look at very closely. One is going to be your quarterly and annual earnings, which are going to come after March. So, since your budget has been announced today, you basically have your entire Feb and March to kind of look into that as well. Because what is going to happen is that even today, your FMCG stocks and your consumption stocks, especially your auto sector, also kind of had a good upside movement as well. But what you also kind of see is that your capex sectors, for example, let's say your railways and defense stocks, they basically had a good 7, 8, 10% correction, which is kind of expected because your capex has basically come down at around 10% from the last time it was basically announced, right? So the thing over here is the markets would have liked an increase in capex, because that is how your economy kind of grows, and that is one thing which kind of contributes to your GDP when it comes to an in-person hand, and kind of contributes to a per capita income as well. But that unfortunately did not happen, and there's basically a cutback on that as well, right? So the two data set and two data points which we will have to focus is going to be on quarterly earnings as well as annual earnings, which are going to come in March, as well as relative rotation and sector rotations, which are going to happen. Because the entire last year, what you can basically see is that the defense sector and all these sectors basically gave you a good amount of money. But recently there will be a shift of funds coming from these sectors into consumption sector, but we have to kind of wait for these earnings to kind of see as well that how do these play in the short term and the long run as well, right? Apart from that, another data point which I was kind of looking at is that last year there were basically 7.5 crores ITRs which were basically filed, right? And out of those, 6.5 crore income tax which taxes which were filed, they basically had an income which was less than 12 lakhs, declared income less than 12 lakhs. So that basically means that using your current regime, that will basically translate that 85% of those people will have a zero tax liability when this regime which was announced today kind of comes into play, right? So the best thing that I would kind of take the markets say when it comes to the markets is that let the dust kind of settle and let the markets kind of find a trend, because historically also what has happened is that the markets have basically gone into a sideways movement post the budget, and apart from that, it has basically taken a trend, and majorly it has gone into an uptrend. But the best way to do it is kind of let it let it kind of go on for the next 8-10 days at least, and then basically see where the market basically goes, right? Apart from that, one thing which I kind of I'm kind of scared over here is that this reduction in tax, right? So whatever this new tax regime is basically done is basically differentiated your tax as well. So there's a difference of 1 lakh rupees as well for a person who's making 25-30 lakhs as well. So
Right.
he's giving tax by, let's say, 1 lakhs as well. But this reduction in tax, right, whether it be for the person who's sitting in an exempted limit, or whether it be for a person who's basically in a 25, 30, 40 lakh zone, and he's also saving a bit. But the difference over here is that this should not be kind of compensated by an increase in GST in your next GST council meet as well, because then it kind of defeats the entire purpose of you guys, kind of giving exemptions and you giving a reduction in tax rates as well. Because end of the day, then your disposable income will still remain the same, but your inflation and food inflation and other things in the country will kind of increase at a steady pace that basically happens over here, right? So fiscal
Okay,
deficit.
all right. Okay, fair enough. Let me also rope in Mr. Hussain Dohadwala, co-CEO of Crimson School. Hussain, thank you for joining us and being here.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Thank you for
Hi.
having
Well,
me.
well, of course, pretty much, education is what you would have focused on, considering the fact that Vinesh has already weighed in on what the education
Right.
sector is likely to gain from this budget. What were your takeaways?
So I think for me, the biggest takeaway was the AI in education and the focus on developing the center of excellence. I think for a long time, we've seen, we've had classroom sizes of 40, 50, 60 kids, while the Right to Education Act came in and limited that to 40 kids. Still ensuring personalized learning pathways or learning journeys always remains a challenge. We also have a huge teacher shortage. And I think now we are at a time where we can really leverage AI to ensure that, we can really manage and ensure personalized learning journeys and pathways for children. So I think the biggest takeaway was, for me, was that. And the other part was what even the NEP 2020 has been talking about skill education. So skill education happens right from the K-12 segment, and then establishing these 5 centers of education for skills is definitely a step in the right direction to ensure kids, when they complete, say, class 12 or graduation, they are at least aligned with the kind of job requirements that the industry has. So for me, these were the 2 big takeaways. If I look at one of the misses, I think the NEP 2020 speaks a lot about the importance of elementary, that is pre-primary and primary education, and teacher upskilling. Now, when we talk of all of this, right, AI, be it in terms of the BharatNet in rural schools, etc., all of this is the hardware. Now, what about the software or the teacher who's actually going to implement this? Again, something what Mr. Khan spoke about. Implementation is the key. And I think that's where the real challenge lies. How do we upskill our teachers so that we can really ensure we can leverage all this great technology, we can leverage the hardware that we have to ensure the learning outcomes can be improved? Because I think that
all
remains
right.
a big challenge.
Those are valid points. In fact, I'm going to go to the big screen and, in fact, also lay out what were some of the other big announcements that this government wanted to focus on. What's in it, for everyone, for farmers. And of course, when you talk about the farmers, the Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana is something that the finance minister spoke elaborately about. 100 districts, according to today's promise, with low yields, moderate crop intensity and below average parameters, will get some sort of a relief. The Converge existing schemes is obviously big on the agenda. Undertake partnerships with other states as well. States should not be looked at in silos. There should be an overlap in terms of mutual agenda, mutual safety, as well as mutual benefit. Limit enhanced from rupees 3 lakhs to 5 lakhs. And this is the Kisan credit card that I spoke about, which is, of course, a transformational endeavor by the government. The Atmanirbharta program, which is a 6-year program for pulses to gain self-sufficiency in production as well. Of course, this is something which has been science-based, science-backed and science motivated as well. Comprehensive program that are going to be launched will include raising vegetables and fruit production and providing remunerative prices as well. Because of seasonal crops, there are many a times that farmers suffer losses. That will account for that as well. There is a national mission that has been announced today on high yielding seeds as well, which is focused on pest resistant and climate resilient seeds as well. Of course, this has become a very important facet of consumption, and making sure that the vegetables and fruits that we eat are not laden with pesticides. 5-year mission to boost cotton productivity as well, ensure higher yields and improve sustainability. This is of course a competition which India has been having with Bangladesh as well, as Bangladesh at one point in time just a couple of years ago was the highest producer and exporter of cotton goods. Makhana board in Bihar is going to be established. This is extremely creative, which will dedicate itself as a makhana board in Bihar. It will support the entire value chain from production to marketing as well. So the idea and the endeavor is to boost makhanas as a healthy alternative when it comes to snacking. Second gene bank to be set up to safeguard genetic resources as well. This is going to be a bank which will have genetic resources which can be invoked if there is a shortage, ensure food and nutritional security with 10 lakh germplasm lines as well. This is of course again a part of that pool which will be invoked whenever there is a paucity of certain yields, and this is obviously extremely welcome. And what has the finance minister announced for women? That is also something very important. Top announcements for women: the Saksham, Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0 program, nutritional support to 8 crore children, 1 crore mothers and 20 lakh girls as well. This is of course a huge scale of announcement, and like Mr. Kant also said a while ago that implementation is going to be the key here. Address challenges of malnutrition. Of course, India, when it comes to that index, does not do very well when the report comes out every year. So this is going to be addressing that. New scheme for 5 lakh first time women entrepreneurs, rupees 2 crore term loans during the next 5 years. This is of course a handy amount which women can use, and of course this will also facilitate the ecosystem in which children will be healthier. Children will in fact be yielding more output. All right, we'll continue with this conversation at this point in time. Rahul Bajaj, CEO of Digital Darwin, joins us on the program as well. Rahul, appreciate you being here with us. Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Thank you so much.
Rahul, well, you know, space and AI are never behind. In fact, this AI race that the world has gotten into, India seems to be a little behind on that. You know, for the pure, reason that we are still observing as to what OpenAI is doing, what DeepSeek is doing, what ChatGPT is doing. Based on the budget that was put out today, do you think that it's only a matter of time that, India too will have its own curve of implementation and progress when it comes to AI, keeping in mind that the government is not far behind when it comes to digital endeavors?
The key remains in the implementation. As I said, that India is not going to be behind in the implementation phase. So the key is ensuring that we are using the models that are available, getting to implementing AI for good, rather than getting into the race of creating a model just for the sake of calling it an Indian model. Because for that, the Chinese startups, government, or the US is much ahead in race. So whatever we do, we would only be doing a catch-up game. Just like what we did for the UPI, what we've done, initiated rather, on the health sector, Abha, if AI could be implemented with those particular foundation models that are already available, and there are a lot of open source models that can be fine-tuned, that can be tuned for Indian use cases. But the key would be that we implement those particular use cases for us.
All right, fair enough. Valid points there. Okay, let's also talk about defense a little bit. General Sudhakarji here with us. General Sudhakarji, thank you so much for being here. The government obviously proposes that more investment needs to be made when it comes to the defense sector, and I'm going to say this and lay this out again, that the government does not want to be an importer anymore. It wants to export, and it wants the bottom line of our GDP. It wants the exchequer to be pleased with the kind of remuneration in money that India can bring in when it comes to defense exports. Are you aligned with this, with the government's vision when it comes to that?
Vinit, good evening. Thank you for getting me to the show, and very compliments to the very distinguished and esteemed panelists. It's a treat to listen to each one of them. As regards the question which you are asking, my understanding and take is that here is a budget which is basically being developed with a premise to shape the Indian economy to what Mr. Savio very rightly articulated. Our aim is to look for a 30 trillion US dollar economy with 18,000 plus per capita income and export oriented income. So that is what we are looking by 2047, and minimum import. We have to be self-reliant. Atmanirbhar Bharat has to be the center of gravity of everything. So we have to be self-dependent, self-reliant. I think this is a very conceptual articulation which Mr. Savio made, and I must compliment him for that. And so keeping this in the backdrop, I think the Indian economy, this particular budget has been developed on the premise of what is the geopolitical churn which is taking place, which has started unfolding post-pandemic, 2020 onwards, let's say, and the supply chain disruption and the price rise all over the world, and India being the brightest spot. When I say the brightest spot, what I mean is India is a country which should rightfully feel proud of having 500 million consumers with the capability of spending $12 a day. It's not me. I am not saying this. It is a central organization in the United Nations who has given out this data. So keeping all these factors in mind, I personally feel that we have just about started the Atmanirbhar Bharat and just about started a kind of a remarkable beginning of $2.57 odd billion export of weapons, arms, ammunition last year, and we aim to actually multiply. So multiplication of this factor is dependent on many issues. Defense production per se is not you think in the night and next day morning you start bearing the fruit. It's not that simple. It requires a huge, long gestation period. But Vinit, if you allow me, there are a couple of issues which are linked to this particular question which you have asked. If you allow me, I would like to articulate. The centrality of any economy or any budget lies in, giving a cure or remedy for the malice or the deficiencies which have been noticed. In past quarter or two, it has been seen that the Indian economy went sluggish despite every pillar of economy being perceived to be in place. Why did it happen? It happened because rightfully it has been articulated that the demand is directly related or linked with the consumption. The consumption was falling. So who are the people who consume maximum? It has been studied by topmost economists. They have given out the theories that it is the low-end bracket of the income spectrum are the people who have the highest propensity to consume. Who are the low-end bracket? And these are the people who have been targeted very rightly by our Honorable Finance Minister. Compliments for that. Second thing, by targeting the service class or the working class, there is a multiplication factor in economy, and that multiplication factor essentially related to the employment generation and income. And so it has again been rightfully targeted. Now you come to the defense budget. This is for the first time.
Quickly, we have a full house, sir. We have a full house, sir. Please wrap up.
Okay. Two more lines. I hope I got the figures right. This is for the first time after a declining statistics between 2012-13 to 2020-24. 2012-13, the budget allocation was 16.4% of the central government annual defense expenditure, annual budget, and it had gone down to 12.9% in 2020.
Okay, fair enough, sir. Vinod Raval, tax expert, also with us on the program. Mr. Raval, are you there with us? I hope you can hear me, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Rawal, incessant complaining from citizens in the country that, okay, we may not be paying taxes when it comes to our income bracket, but the fact of the matter is, that we end up paying GST, we end up in fact having our TDS deducted. Are all those complaints likely to mellow down now that the tax bracket has been pushed up to 12 lakhs according to you?
Yes, thank you, Vineet. Like the finance minister budget, you have kept the part B at the end of the whole debate. So it's fine. She also said that I will be putting the numbers later.
Saving the best for the last, sir. Saving the best for the last.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you for taking me in this debate. The thing is actually that, yes, 12 lakhs rupees. Now there is no income tax. For TDS, there are some rationalization. The slab rates, the threshold limits has gone up. For the slabs, I think this is the best the percentages which has been given now. It is giving you a benefit of 35,000 rupees to around 2 lakhs rupees if your income is around 25 lakhs rupees. So everybody is getting benefited with that. And in addition to that, a week ago, they have given an 8th pay commission also. For the salary, they have an additional 75,000 rupees standard deduction, which also adds up to this. So up to an income of 12 lakhs 75,000 rupees, there is no tax now. However, if your income is above 12 lakhs rupees, I was right when I was listening to the other panelists, that if it is more than 12 lakhs, then he has to pay the taxes on the earlier income also. Actually, sir, this is the rebate given to the people who has an income up to 12 lakhs rupees, means a lakh rupees per month he's making. So government is subsidizing that 60,000 rupees tax out of their own pocket under section 87A. Whereas if your income is more than that, you don't need that subsidy. So certainly you have to pay taxes on that. There may be some rationalization if your income is 12 lakhs and 1,000, so you're not paying 60,000 rupees tax in that case. So that, I think, modalities will be coming later on. So that is there. So now, if you really compare the tax slabs, earlier it was 3 lakhs and above, the tax rates were getting changed. There was lesser tax slabs. Now the tax slabs have also been stretched down from 15 lakhs to 24 lakhs. So 30% tax is now payable after 24 lakhs. They have not reduced it, but the most of the numbers has come in this bracket because there are very less people who are below that amount. So now the thing is, as it was being said, that there are few people, around 8 crore people file their tax returns, and out of that, 80% are in this segment. It has been proven test in last decades by every country that whenever there is a tax slab relaxations, the income goes high. The reason is disposable income.
Right,
they
sir.
get more money to spend, they pay more income taxes, they pay more GSTs. And with that cycle, the country gets more money and person also gets wealthier with that.
All right,
so
sir.
I feel for the middle class, this is a bonanza, as you rightly mentioned.
Bonanza for the middle class. But, let me invoke Mr. Vinesh Menon, Director General FICCI, arise into this conversation once again. Vinesh, I just read out, some of the incentives that have been announced for women and how that is likely to also facilitate the children who are associated with their moms. What do you make of this connection, and how is this going to help, the education ecosystem from the ground up?
I think, can you hear me, Vinny?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, I think a large portion of the SOPs are to do with the Anganwadi workers and the folks who actually work on the ground with Anganwadis, which take care of children between 6 months to 6 years of age. Of course, pregnant mothers is one part of it, but they also help children get their early education in these Anganwadis, and that I think makes a lot of difference. Very important. NEP has emphasized on this particular area that before the age of 7, a child garners the maximum input of what's going around him or her, and therefore I think that's a very important step that has been taken. So I think women, we all know that to a large extent, if you look at the entire education ecosystem, a large portion of the percentage of the teaching staff in the education sector, they are women, and I think what they bring to the table as teachers, I think are critical, and I think any amount of SOPs that are needed to take care of that area would be is certainly welcome.
All right, fair enough. Let me in fact once again bring in Savio into this conversation. Savio, if you're there with us.
I am.
All right, Savio, we've been in multiple debates where we always talk about, what India needs to do to get ahead of China. And they say that the fastest way to get somewhere is slowly. Do you think India has definitely mastered the art of not rushing into any kind of a competition, but actually realizing that with the kind of complication and administrative issues India has, the budget has to be treated from an angle which spells out a cohesive increase in efforts, not immediate?
The biggest problem that some people have as far as opinions are concerned is that competition is about, winning in a particular segment or in a particular skill set. But what if two people are not in that same particular skill set? Then that competition is not even. So the real game of geopolitics is not India versus China or India versus US. It is India versus India's strengths itself. India can create. I mean, let's say let me give you this example in this way. Let's say there's somebody who's very good at cricket and, the world admires cricket. But there is another person that's not good at cricket. Maybe that person's good at sepak which is a sport very few people play. But you have somebody who wins laurels in sepak for the country. Are you going to say he's less than the cricketer as far as his commitment to that sport is? It's the same thing in the geopolitical space as well. I think what India is doing is not following. What India is doing is creating a mark of its own and then let the other countries follow us. Because we've got our own strengths. India is not going to be China. And we don't want India to be China. The political setups are different. But what India has is a very strong, young India and a young, talented India, a young, skilled India and a young, intellectual India. That's a great strength that we have. And we're going to play to our strengths rather than just ape any other country. People are talking about being like America and look at what deep state, look at what has happened in America as far as, the AI is concerned or China's AI is concerned. But why isn't anybody talking about the way we've done UPI?
Savio,
or
just
we've
hold on.
handled the COVID crisis?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is a point that definitely needs to be pondered over. Mr. Shashi Tharoor, Member of Parliament, also joins us on the broadcast at this point in time. Mr. Tharoor, appreciate you speaking with us. This is Vineet. So, your initial assessment of what this budget entails and how it's going to, in fact, create India into a very robust economy.
Well, I'm afraid I find it a rather underwhelming budget. I mean, if you're a salaried taxpayer with a decent income, this may put a little more money in your pocket. And certainly if you're living in Delhi and Bihar, the government hopes you'll be grateful to the ruling party when the elections come around this year. But short of that, this budget does not address any of the central issues that we have been raising before the budget that we hope the finance minister would address. First and foremost is the problem of unemployment. If you don't have a job, then tax relief is academic because you don't have a salary. And the problem is that large numbers of our young people are unemployed. We hold the world's record for youth unemployment. We have the world's record for the number of college-educated unemployed in our country. And that's a very dismaying situation. Secondly, there's some real worry about investment. Where is investment going to come from? This government can say grand things about manufacturing and exports, but manufacturing will not come without investment. Without investment, you won't get jobs and you won't get exports. The problem we have at the moment is not only that FDI is leaving the country in droves, but we're also seeing a situation where domestic investors are skittish about investing. And there are various reasons for that, but one of them is certainly the government's own attitude, which is discouraging investment. The policy of championing a few so-called national champion companies, which has created monopolies and duopolies in a couple of sectors, has discouraged all other companies from coming in because they don't have a level playing field there. And they're not expecting that any rule changes are going to benefit them. They'll only be geared towards the big boys.
Right.
And so they're not investing. We've seen last year $23,000 millionaires have left this country, migrated and become NRIs. Now, we need to reverse that. We need to persuade them to stay here and to spend their money here, not take it out, and to invest in creating jobs for our people. I see nothing in this budget that addresses those problems. The finance minister didn't even use the word unemployment, didn't use the word investment in any serious practical sense of the term. And already last year, you remember, she'd announced an employment-linked incentive scheme for which they budgeted 10,000 crores. They only managed to cut the budget down to 6,000, and they haven't generated enough jobs from that scheme last year. So this year, there's no longer talk of that. Where is employment going to come from? These are my big concerns. There are many other concerns, but this is why I feel much less excited about the middle-class tax cut, because it's not going to address these larger questions.
But Mr. Tharoor, the government says that, the tenets of economic growth have been maintained despite, the pandemic wreaking havoc just a few years ago. If you talk about a sustainable and a consistent GDP growth, that's taken place. And even if you talk about inflation, as compared to what it was in the UP era, the government maintains it's under control. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's actually not accurate. The growth rate has gone down. We've seen that even by last year's projections, this year's projection is lower. And global projections by bodies like the IMF are even lower still. Secondly, as far as the question of inflation is concerned, baseline inflation is 5% from September onwards. Where has inflation gone down? So even though you're putting more money in the pockets of the middle class, that money that they have in their pocket is going to go much less far than it went 1 year ago, let alone 5 years ago. So inflation has also eroded the nominal value of people's incomes. I'm sorry, I don't mean to rain on the parade. It's nice to be having some sort of feel-good messages coming out of the government for a change. But in this particular instance, we've got to look at realistic assessments. Viksit Bharat cannot be a reality at the kind of a very modest growth rate we're seeing now. Where even if you get 6.4, you need a minimum of consistent 8% for the next 22 years to get to the kind of economy the Prime Minister wants us to be. Aspirations are all very well, and I applaud the aspiration. But let's understand we don't have a realistic pattern to get there yet.
All right, Mr. Tharoor, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us. Thank you so much, sir. Savio, 20 seconds to respond to that. We've run out of time.
Well, I have a lot of respect for Mr. Tharoor, but
well, he
Mr.
said that
Tharoor
the finance minister did not even mention the word unemployment. Did you find that surprising?
No, I didn't find that surprising, because I've come to realize that people like Mr. Tharoor from the Congress will see a beautiful bride, but they will still find a fault with the bride, saying her bindi is not put correct or her jewels are not of the highest quality. That's the inherent nature of the opposition, and Mr. Tharoor, because it's his job, will have to find fault in what the government has done. But the reality of the situation is this. I don't know how Mr. Tharoor or anybody defines employment as far as the mapping of employment is concerned. And I would advise them, in a couple of days, our book will be out. They can realize what has been done as far as...
Just hold on to that thought. Mr. Praful Chandra Gadai, former Finance Minister of Odisha, is also with us on the program. Mr. Praful Chandra, thank you for joining us. Sir, aap meri awaaz sun pa rahe hain?
Yes.
सर, हमसे बातचीत करने के लिए आपका बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद. Sir, your initial reaction to the budget, we just heard from Mr. Shashi Tharoor, who said that this is a non-tenable budget.
Listen to me. Government of India, they have proposed for a Vikasit Bharat, developed Bharat by 2047, for which 8% GDP growth is necessary. But now it is confined to 6.8%. Unless there is GDP growth, how would developed India, the dream of developed India is possible? Number two, I tell you, the middle class people and these poor people, unemployed youth, they wanted to see what this budget delivering for them. Only for the middle class people, I can say, this income tax relaxation up to 12 lakhs is just follows to them, but there is no other thing for the middle class people. For the unemployed youth, the budget doesn't speak anything. To arrest this price rise, there is no indication. Unless and until the oil price is revised. When a crude oil price is reducing. The retail sale of gas, oil is increasing. It has a cascading effect. The price increase of oil has a cascading effect on the price of other commodities. People of India are greatly affected by this price rise. So I'm from Odisha. So far as Odisha interest is concerned in the budget, I say we are desperate. This budget is for Bihar, people of Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Purbanchal states, Assam, and Andhra Pradesh. Odisha government has a long-standing demand for a special category state, for a focus, at least to make it a focus state, or declare some special package for the development of Odisha. The present Chief Minister of Odisha met Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Union Finance Minister for a special package for the infrastructure development of the country, of the Odisha. Because, large investment is coming to Odisha, for which infrastructure development is badly necessary. For infrastructure development, there is no adequate money in the capital plan outlay. Capital expenditure is I tell you, is very desperate with the capital expenditure. Now this fiscal deficit also doesn't speak for that. However, this budget to me, for the people of Odisha, is not positive, it's not practical, it doesn't deliver anything to us. For Odisha, because of political, for Bihar, for political reasons, there is a greenfield airport, there is Makhan board, there is a lot of money for the expansion of the university, Patna University and IITs, lot of money for Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh and Purbanchal. Negligence has been exhibited in this budget for the poor people of Odisha.
All right, sir. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your sentiment associated with this budget as well. Of course, that's a perspective that you've shared with us, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're going to dip into a very, very minuscule break. Uday Pratap Singh is going to take over on the other side. I'll be right back.